little bit of video sizzle. So please take a look and then welcome George and Steve.
Sanders.
Hey there, folks.
I'm Colonel Sanders.
I'm Colonel Sanders. I know that.
And are you the real Colonel Sanders?
Yes. So how you been doing?
You're not the real Colonel.
I mean, what are you gonna do? It's not like you can find another Colonel, right?
Secret recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Speaking of fast food, KFC in the news. KFC just unveiled a sunscreen that smells like extra crispy fried chicken.
This is funny as heck.
Tell me, do you like games? Welcome to my game.
But you know what? That's why I'm for Bernie Sanders. I love his chicken, but out of respect, we should refer to him as the Colonel.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that KFC's new spicy crispy zinger chicken sandwich has been successfully launched into space.
In a way, it's like the way KFC has the different comedians like Colonel Sanders.
Yes, it's the same thing.
It's finger licking good.
It's finger licking good. It's finger licking good.
Thanks a lot.
It's always much better starting with the sizzle.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is George Felix. This is not George Felix also. This is Steve Kelly. We're really excited to be here, so thanks for giving us a little bit of time. Today we're gonna be talking about just the journey we've been on as a brand for the last few years, and so we call it the recolonization of KFC. So we just wanted to give you a little sense for where we've been, where the brand's been, and then get into kind of how we've tried to bring this brand into 2018. So this just gives you a sense for how big KFC is. So if you think about it, 21,000 restaurants, $24 billion in sales globally. So this is a massive brand. Virtually any country you go to, when they see the Colonel, they know KFC, which is pretty remarkable. But if you think about where the brand started, it started in a small town in Kentucky, Corbin, Kentucky, and a guy named Harland Sanders. And he was 65 years old when he created the secret recipe for Kentucky Fried Chicken, and even patented the way to make it. He used a pressure fryer to make his fried chicken, which I would not recommend you do at home. It's very dangerous. But one of the reasons that he did it was a faster way to make chicken, and he sold it out of a gas station in Corbin, Kentucky. And he believed this is the world's best fried chicken. And so from there, he literally went across the country, door to door, to see if other people would sell his, this amazing secret recipe of his. And he wanted to bring this to the masses. And so this is a picture of him with actually the first franchisee of Kentucky Fried Chicken. His name was Pete Harmon. And so they met in Utah, actually. And he'd been turned down by hundreds and hundreds of people. But he persevered and he kept going and finally found Pete Harmon and developed what, that's the first franchisee of now what is, thousands of franchisees across the globe. And here are some looks at like what KFC means globally. So can you imagine like a restaurant like that in the US for KFC? It's just not what we're used to. Lines like out the door, around the block. If a new KFC opens in another market, it's like massive news. Japan, ironically, there's like thousands of statues of Colonel Sanders across the country. He's like a national icon. The big meal on Christmas in Japan is Kentucky Fried Chicken. So people will line up, they order in advance, and they get this giant bucket meal for their family. They get it's like this really premium thing. But I mean, these are things that like when you think of KFC here, it's just not how you think of it. But this is how this brand has exploded and taken off globally.
You even cursed the local baseball team. They after a loss, there were some riots, and they threw one of the Colonel Sanders statues into the river. The team hadn't won a championship in 30 years, so they got the money back to build a new Colonel Sanders statue.
So all that's awesome, right? That is the great news. What's not so great news is right back here in the U.S. where this brand started. The brand's had fallen on hard times, and so this is just a chart of store traffic in the U.S. and I'm sure like you all have memories from when you were younger, when you were a kid of Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I had the same. But the brand just kind of lost relevance, and Colonel Sanders passed away in 1980. And since then, the brand just really struggled with its identity, where it fit in, and just lost relevance.
And that's evident in a lot of ways, the most noticeable of which is just the name itself. Going from Kentucky Fried Chicken, which not only adds the authenticity of where the recipe came from and his roots, to KFC, in a move to disassociate ourselves with fried chicken. Have we lost that pride in fried, as we say, and also just the idea that we want to be known for more than just chicken because the customer's evolving. It turns into how do you KFC? This was something that I was on the marketing team as we're going through this painful process, but it was obvious that we didn't stand for something, and so we had to try and stand for everything, and that leads to a little bit of mirror marketing or trying to market to who we think we want our audience to be rather than who it really is. So we had to go back and go into the archives. We actually have an underground archives with all of the Colonel's stuff in there, one of his limos. I mean, thousands of boxes as far as you can see. He kept everything. We have a few that are just full of keys to the cities. So I think we've got like 1,000 keys to the city of Jacksonville, if anybody here is from that area. But our creative agency and our teams went in and just started digging through these relics. What made the brand so special? What was it about the Colonel that really drove this brand globally? And here is a snapshot of what we discovered, which is these are business cards. The Colonel failed at so many things in life. It wasn't until he was 65 that he ended up developing the original recipe. But you'll see things on here. He was a mule tender in the Army. He was a light bulb salesman. He was a ferry boat operator. He was an amateur obstetrician, which that's a very strange thing. But he kept a bucket of lard, gauze, and some shears in his truck. And anybody who needed help and couldn't afford a doctor, you're calling the Colonel. And there are actually dozens of babies named Harland within his lifetime because he helped deliver. So in Corbin, Kentucky, still a popular name. So really, he is the most interesting man in the world. You've seen the Dos Equis campaign. That's a little fictional. He's very suave, but it was the Colonel, and for better or worse. He's not a perfect guy. A lot of crazy stories. As he was an aspiring lawyer, he got disbarred for punching his client in the face in the courtroom for lying to him. You can't make it up, though. And so what we wanted to do is, how do we get back to showing that most interesting man in the world type side of him? We think if the audience today knew about that, there would be a new love for Colonel Sanders, and also just educating them that he's not a cartoon character, he's not just a celebrity. They can hold some of his values, but maybe not all of them. And what it brought to us was this philosophy that he had discovered decades ago, which we articulate as sales overnight and brand over time. So you'll notice the Colonel, when he was at his best, he's hard selling. He's got his suit on, and it's that entire thing is just a symbol to let you know, I'm here to sell you chicken. And every day was a good day. But that didn't stop him from doing really weird shit, like having a fake Death Star rolling down the streets. This is before you could get sued for that, I'm sure.
And so it was pretty clear we had to get back, like for us to be relevant again, we had to actually get back to what this brand stood for back when it was at its best. And so when Kentucky Fried Chicken was at its best, Colonel Sanders was front and center in everything the brand did. So whether it was the bucket, the restaurant, the advertising, anything you saw, the Colonel was there. And he stands for unrelenting quality. He stands for that ridiculous, over-the-top chicken salesman. And so, as we think about it as marketers now, we've got the North Star figured out. We're back. We're not going to be chasing fads and hashtags. We're getting back to the way the Colonel built this brand. But then the question is, how do you bring the Colonel back? And this was 3 years ago. So we're going to roll the launch ad that kind of relaunched this this campaign for us.
Howdy, folks. It's me, Colonel Sanders. I've been gone for a while, and boy, howdy, have things changed. Nowadays, you got your International Space Station, your double-sided tape, your cargo pants. You seen these pants? That's too many pockets. But what you don't always seem to have these days is my Kentucky Fried Chicken. Well, I'm here to change that, folks. I'm here to make sure my chicken's still as tasty and delicious as it ever was. I'm Colonel Sanders. And I'm back, America. I'm back, America! It's still finger-licking good.
And so you can see there, that was actor Darrell Hammond. You may know him from SNL, his Trump impression, among others. But the idea was, obviously, Colonel Sanders passed away in 1980, but we want to bring his spirit back. And so we've taken the approach that there's no one person that could ever replace the Colonel. And so for us, we're really just bringing what he stood for and him back to the forefront. And we've done that through a rotating cast of celebrities. And so each celebrity, there's a few reasons we wanted to do this. Each celebrity brings their own twist, their own take on the Colonel. They all do research on him. Some knew him really well, some didn't, but they all want to kind of bring their own spin to this character. But the other thing this does is, if we just locked into one actor or one way of doing it, that could potentially get old. And so from a marketing standpoint, we want to keep things fresh. We want to keep things unexpected. And so this kind of gives us that flexibility. And so just even last month, if we go to the next slide, we announced our current Colonel, who hopefully you've seen her, Reba McEntire, assumed the role of Colonel Sanders. And for us, this is just another way for us to keep things unexpected, but for us, it wasn't about making a social statement or anything like that. It was really just, we've said all along, anyone that embodies the values of the Colonel is qualified to play Colonel Sanders. And so we're launching a new product called Smoky Mountain Barbecue, which you should go out and get today. For that, we wanted to find someone with Southern roots, someone that embodied what the Colonel stood for. And if you know anything about Reba McEntire, she came from humble beginnings. She was a bit of an entrepreneur herself, and she believes in hard work and that Southern upbringing. And so it was a great fit for us, and we're really excited about her. She's one of our most beloved colonels. So we can roll how we introduce the world to Colonel Reba next.
Colonel Sanders, same as always. Absolutely nothing's changed. Oh, please ignore any likeness. Famous country singers. I'm definitely not a woman. Oh, if there's one thing that's new about me, it's my Smoky Mountain Barbecue. Smoky and crispy, tender and amazing too. Same old Colonel, same old Colonel. I swear I'm not a famous woman. Yeah. It's finger licking good.
So a bit of a departure from that original Darrell spot. It keeps getting weirder. So along with the TV campaign, which obviously that's our huge mass audience, and I think we consider that the sales overnight piece, where we've got to have that year-over-year sales goal. Now we're going to kind of what we call branded everything strategy, which this is more of the brand over time. How do we make sure that we're keeping awareness and consideration high for the brand? We're inviting new people that previously wouldn't have considered KFC. And this is just a little snapshot of some of the photos, but there are thousands of these of the Colonel and what he did in his time. He had so many albums. I mean, that's Tijuana Picnic. Not exactly sure how it relates, but he had records just basically for every day. He would record a roll and say, it is January 3rd, and what a great day for fried chicken. And he would send those out for local co-ops to run on the radio, and just showing that every day was a good day for fried chicken, whether it's with a hot air balloon or one of our 4,000 Japanese statues. So as we continue this, you'll see a few more of the ideas that we came up with.
Yeah, so we're just going to run through some of the things we've done to try and extend this campaign beyond kind of traditional marketing and TV. So extra crispy sunscreen. it's interesting. A lot of people, or most people, know Kentucky Fried Chicken for the secret recipe, and they think of that as you know what they think of when they think of Kentucky Fried Chicken. But interestingly enough, we also have a second recipe called Extra Crispy, and that's what most people in the U.S. prefer, which is that crispier, crunchier chicken. But like over half of consumers don't realize that you can get that at KFC. So the challenge for us was how do we remind people that KFC also has extra crispy chicken. And so as we looked at the campaign, we wanted to do all the traditional stuff, but we wanted to have some non-traditional ideas as well.
And our colonel at the time was George Hamilton. If you've seen it, he's known for his deep tan, a little extra crispy lifestyle, as we call it. And so we had the idea to introduce the extra crispy sunscreen that not only will protect you from the harmful rays, but also emit the delicious odor of fried chicken. As we like to say, it smells like chicken, tastes like sunscreen. The legal on the back of this was incredible, but we not only just having the fun video of George Hamilton with the sunscreen, but also having a giveaway so that anybody could get it. And we shot ourselves in the foot in the sense that we thought we'd sell this over a couple of weeks, or not sell it, give it away. And within the first hour, the whole supply was gone, and we actually ran through a bit more than we had, so had to re-up.
And just another thing to note on that, like it's fun to do these like kind of crazy off the wall things, but like the fun part, I don't know if you saw in that opening clip, Jimmy Fallon's talking about, you know, KFC has a new extra crispy sunscreen that smells like fried chicken. Like we're embedding the product message that we want to get across into these kind of unconventional things. And so
for a few $1,000s, it was almost 2.5 to 3 billion impressions of earned coverage,
which you just can't get through mass marketing. So anyone here know what the #1 sales day every year is for KFC in the U.S.? Mother's Day. Whoever said that, getting a gift. You're getting a gift card, sir. It is Mother's Day, and the insight is it's pretty obvious if you think about it. Dads, kids want to give mom the night off from cooking, but they don't want to cook themselves either, so let the Colonel do the cooking. And that was kind of a message he had when he, back in the day was, let the Colonel do the cooking tonight, a great home-cooked meal that you don't have to home cook. And so for us, the challenge is, we know that's the #1 day, but there's always room to get bigger and own the mind space around Mother's Day.
And when the idea came up that what mom really wants more than anything is just some time to herself, instead of having to think about always her children first, or her husband, or her work, the idea of just relaxing with a nice read. And so that got a little silly, and what about a romance novel? And the Colonel happens to be, as you can see, a very strapping man who knows how to cook, and that sounds kind of sexy. But it's not enough just to make a fancy cover, send it out. Instead, we want to do it authentically, so that hopefully fans in that space don't feel like we're intruding. Instead, we're adding value to something that they care about. And so we actually worked with a real novella writer. This was a 96-page, like pretty well-written book. The cover artist actually does all the like Harlequin covers. And when we posted this on Amazon, on the Kindle store, it hit the top of the charts instantly. And what was amazing is that all the reviews were about the literature. It was, why did the Baron run off with so-and-so? He should have. And it wasn't about, is KFC dumb for marketing this silly romance novel? That could have been the headline. Instead, it was more of the legitimacy.
The mom jeans don't hurt either on the cover. So.
Oh, yeah. The purse over the shoulder.
So I think we all know there's a massive resurgence going on right now with superheroes and comic books. Steve, sounds like you've been a fan for a while. And so the thought was, how can we tap into this? This is something huge that's going on in culture right now. Can KFC play a role in this? Can we reach this rabid fan base and tell them the story of Kentucky Fried Chicken and tell them the story of Colonel Sanders, but done in an authentic way?
And in the comic book space, it's typically your audience is more entrenched. So they know more about that subject than you could imagine. So it's kind of hard to just step in as a brand and try and have fun, because it's just immediately a shill. And if you don't have all the legitimacy, it's going to get brought out really soon. So we went kind of deep with some real legitimate comic book nerds. And what we decided to do is create this series. The Colonel's already a bit of a superhero. He already has his suit. He's got some kind of mythical qualities to him, some of the stories that have come out. So why not create this story arc that basically unearths all of the most buried comic book entities that the real fans would just be shocked to see. So whether it's a very rare prime universe, or whether it's a character that people haven't seen in a long time and have been asking for, what we tried to do with each comic book is for the comic audience, find something that they would be shocked about. And what was really gave us a lot of pride was when Comic Alliance voted our first comic book of the year, and went on a long rant on how it was terrible that a brand would do that, and basically put the challenge out to all the writers of just, you can't let KFC do this again.
So I think another thing that's fairly common, particularly in the QSR space, but across brands, is brands creating merch lines. And to be totally frank, most of them suck. They're very self-serving. They're like, the thought of a marketer saying, man, if only our consumers could be walking billboards for us. But they're just not stuff that the average person would really want to wear. And so we took the challenge on to say, we want to create a merch line, but can we actually make one that people would want to wear, and can we actually make a merch line that's cool?
And our brand had not been cool in a long time, so that was a big challenge. Even now that we're growing some consideration, would people want to be associated with a brand? And so the story that we came up with is it would be much better if we just created gear that people loved, that would help identify KFC just as being synonymous with fried chicken, so that you're not walking around with the KFC sweatshirt, it's Fried Chicken USA. And the goal that we had was hopefully you'd be in an airport and somebody would say, oh my God, where did you get that shirt? And you'd pull the tag and see the Colonel, and that's the real value. Like, that's awesome. And just so happened that's exactly how that works. This is a big spotlight of a sweatshirt, but this got written up in just the most ridiculous places: GQ, men's fashion, and again, in all those industries, it was I can't believe that KFC didn't fuck it up.
Neither can we. The Colonel was famous for using any means possible, right, to sell. Every day was a great day for fried chicken. And so we are a firm believer that if Colonel Sanders was here today, he would love social media. He would jump on all the newest technologies and do whatever he could to get his message about Kentucky Fried Chicken out to the masses. And so, Steve's going to tell you a little bit about a partnership we did with Waze a few years ago.
So the idea, if you haven't used Waze, it's a navigation app, and they came out with a feature where you could change the voice. The #1 voice of all time is our man Arnold on the left. He's got a very iconic voice. I think he was actually the first celebrity voice, the Colonel being the second. And what was fun is that not only is the Colonel's southern voice kind of jarring, and you're not used to hearing that from a typically stoic navigation system, but also that we kind of got to lean into the marketing side and go straight at it, and not just give you directions, but constantly trying to veer you off of your course towards a KFC. And so instead of next right, it's, are you sure you want to take that right? Only 3 miles this way, is it? And so it gets a little annoying, but it's also running at that joke that that's his job, is to be intrusive and sell you chicken.
This one's a fun one. One of the key points of difference we have with our competition is we have trained cooks in every one of our kitchens. We have 19,000 trained cooks across the country that hand prepare the Colonel's Kentucky Fried Chicken every single day. And there is a painstaking process you have to go through to do it. It takes like 25 minutes start to finish to make a batch of original recipe chicken. And I didn't know any of that until I started, and we all have to work in a KFC one day a year to get the full experience and get trained. And my entire perception of KFC changed once I did that. The problem is, as a marketer, I can't have hundreds of millions of people coming through our test kitchen to have that same experience. I don't have that time. And so the challenge was, how can we convey this amazing point of difference that we have to the masses so they understand the care that goes into preparing our food?
And while we're having all the fun with this content marketing, we're constantly getting that challenge of, you got to tell hand prepared. You got to tell it takes 25 minutes. Real cooks in every kitchen. And that's the kind of language that just goes right past consumers these days. Everybody tries to claim we're fresh and we're prepared by real cooks. So to do it in a construct that actually was entertaining enough that you're soaking up the steps was the challenge. VR is obviously really engaging, but typically the way you're seeing it being used is more for just the wow factor of the technology, not necessarily solving a brand challenge. So we came up with this idea of having an escape room, and if you've been through one of those before, the idea is that you're locked, and in order to get out, you have to uncover clues and you have to solve challenges. So in this same way, it's a bit like Colonel Sanders is a maniacal Willy Wonka persona. You're locked in his test kitchen, and you have to uncover the steps for cooking the chicken in order to progress and eventually escape. And should you be able to, you are now greeted with not only a congratulations, but a certificate to become a KFC cook yourself.
And that's been now available on the Oculus Rift store. Like, we've had thousands and thousands of people download. It's a free game, and so people are engaging with it for 10+ minutes, but they're also kind of learning the steps and the effort that goes into making our chicken.
Yeah, we actually couldn't get Oculus to pick up the phone or answer the emails, even through our Facebook reps, because it's, this is a brand thing. And after it launched, they called us and were like, we had no idea it would be good. We thought this was going to be just an ad, and ended up featuring it over Christmas, which is their biggest download period, and they had it on the Oculus store for free, and it cost us no money. So it was a nice gesture on their part, but also a reminder, you got to get that into people's hands so they trust you. Wrestling Colonel. Do we got time? Roll this video? Yeah. We're good?
What's for dinner, Mom?
I have no idea. Ask your father.
What's for dinner, Dad?
Ask your mother.
Why don't you ask me?
No, I came to this event to be entertained. What do you know about chicken? Chicken? Anybody in their right mind knows that KFC's Chicken Little is the world's best chicken sandwich.
Says who? Some old man in a white suit walking around with a beat stick?
Excuse me?
You heard me, Sandy.
Didn't expect this! Here we go! Clothesline! Oh, he's fired up! Look at this! Big elbow drop! Talk about that incredible athleticism. Look at this! Oh, but there's a super kick! Oh! He got it!
KFC's new Chicken Little is made with a hand-breaded tender on a sesame seed bun. It's finger little good.
Still one of my favorites. So I guess I should have given some setup, but sometimes I like it just to speak for itself. A lot of the stunts that we were showing you before, those are cheap. 30 grand here for a romance novel, $40,000 here, and the idea is that there are hundreds others we could show you that maybe most of them didn't hit, some do. But the idea of doing things really lightweight and hoping that they get earned coverage, and some will blow up, some won't. But you also have to mix in some solid hits that will happen from a media standpoint. So when we're looking at media integrations, we hold our WWE partnerships up to all of our potential partners as just a shining example of what we're trying to do as a brand, which is that if you haven't been to a live WWE event, first of all, I always thought it was like a younger male audience. It's families. Young families that are there with their kids are all just having a blast. And there's a standard practice, which is when it goes to commercial on the live shoot, everyone in the arena just boos the hell out of the commercials. Because again, it's like instead of watching your show, you're getting marketed to. And so that's just kind of a fun thing the crowd always does. So when we're talking with them, how can we turn that into a positive experience? How can we add value to what otherwise would be them standing around booing? And that's when we came up with the idea of, well, if we could actually have the commercial spill out into the ring and solve it live, wouldn't that be a little bit more fun? And to eventually, that wasn't just a fake sound. We may have upped the volume just a bit, but to have that arena chanting Colonel Sanders and getting excited for us was just beyond what we could imagine. And in fact, the WWE sent us a video from, I believe it was Thailand, where they were having a small international match, and Dolph Ziggler, who was that colonel, was just wrestling in a match, not even as the colonel, and the entire arena is chanting Colonel Sanders, and they sent us the video. We've since had several other WWE stars. I've got my Colonel Ric Flair shirt on, and each time we've tried to push to the next level just to say, what have other brands never been able to do with the property? And to the WWE's credit, they've worked with us and said, as long as you're adding more value and people are loving it, we'll continue to give unprecedented access. A real quick one here. We've talked about doing the stunts for low weight, $30,000. We talked about the big media integration partnerships with the likes of WWE. Has anybody seen this painting? All right, this is one of my favorite. This is Mike Edgett. You shouldn't know his name. I think he's a writer or maybe in marketing somewhere from Utah, and he is getting a piggyback ride from the Colonel, and that is because he was part of an amazing activation that happened for us. Sitting around our social team and our agency, we're thinking through even the smallest properties that we had yet to brand. And we were talking about our Twitter account, and the idea came up that what are the things about our Twitter account that nobody even looks at? And it's who follows us. So what would you do with an area where nobody looks? Well, for us, you would hide the secret recipe. So we unfollowed everyone, and we followed only 11 people, and that was the Spice Girls and a few guys named Herb. And we just decided to leave it there. We won't tell anyone. We'll see what happens. And I think it's close to 3 billion impressions later, and the Today Show and Good Morning America, and that costs $0. That was just sitting around trying to think of what else do we have that we haven't branded. And here was the original tweet from Mike Edge. Again, he's not even a blue check. A few people had discovered it even before him, and it didn't catch fire. So we got a little lucky there.
Yeah, and just to wrap up, so obviously what is this doing for our brand? It is building our brand over time, right? So this is a brand consideration amongst millennials, and so you can see we've made about a 40% increase in that. Now we're not closing all these people into sales, so that's the next step. But first step for us is make KFC relevant again, get back in the consideration set, so a younger generation actually thinks this could be a brand for them. And the better news is that it's translating to sales. So you're not going to have time to just say, I'm building this brand over time if you're not driving sales overnight. So as mentioned earlier, we just wrapped up our 4th consecutive year of same-store sales growth, which I can't tell you the last time that's happened in the U.S. for KFC. So we're really excited. And it's not just marketing. We're remodeling 3,000 restaurants across the country, but we're taking this idea of the Colonel being back front and center, the voice on the bucket, from a time before salad. We want to bring back the Colonel in a big way at every single touch point. And so these are the lessons we'll leave you with. If you're lucky enough to work on a brand that has a great heritage, embrace those strengths and find ways to make it relevant in today's world. Always be thinking about sales overnight and brand over time. It's not an either or. You got to be doing both all the time. And the way we think about that is branded everything. And there's no place off limits for us that we can take the Colonel. That's all we got. Thank you.
George, Steve, that was great. Let's get a few questions in. Anybody have any questions of the group?
How do you guys facilitate? Oh, I'm sorry. Nick Tarrant from iView in Chicago. How do you guys facilitate as a corporation sort of the creative development of this stuff? Do you have like a preferred agency? Is it in-house? Just the ideation of all the guerrilla type stuff you're doing.
Yeah, we're really lucky. We have our lead agency is Wieden & Kennedy, so they're where everything starts for us. So they're our lead strategy agency and creative. And so when Steve was talking about going into the archives, that was when we brought Wieden & Kennedy on. They went in. And they've developed this North Star for us, so we partner closely with them. We also have, obviously, like a media agency and PR firm, and so we kind of call it our integrated agency team with our KFC marketing team that we kind of collaborate together on bringing these things to life.
Hi, I'm Tara from Chatbooks, and we're big KFC fans at Chatbooks. We're constantly following your social.
Okay, you get a gift card too.
I actually can't wait to tell our CFO. He's going to be so thrilled. So can you tell me a little bit about what your social media strategy is? And, you know, I always kind of figure it's like one guy in a corner coming up with like awesome things. I hope that's what it is. But how do you kind of go about doing your planning? And I mean, you obviously have to swing for the fences, and a few, you know, are home runs and a lot are foul balls. But how does that work?
Yeah, it used to be one guy in a corner. It's not anymore.
That was Steve.
It's incredible, the team that we have now, how well thought out some of these, what we would call silly or dumb things are, and that's because on social particularly, we're taking that sales overnight, brand over time philosophy, which has given us a much larger leash. I think what we struggled with originally when we got kind of excited about this new Colonel campaign coming back and wanted to do fun, weird stuff that wasn't just selly on social, the problem was you still got to be bringing people into the restaurant. And so as we've solidified more of the units that are driving foot store traffic, we know the ones that are converting to sales, and we can do some really tactical work, and we know that we're reaching people at the right time, the right audience. That then leaves us a large leash to go have a lot of fun. As long as we could prove to our leadership that we're covering our bases from bringing people into the restaurant, the rest is up to us. And what we found is that it's the biggest problem is that with all this content, you typically see it like we presented in a video. It's like a 30-second or a 60-second. That's amazing, but that's not how people consume content. So the biggest challenge for our team is how do you take something that's digested really well as a 60, but you may be flying through your feed and all you can get is a 2-second GIF, or all you can get is a little carousel unit. And so typically it's just trying to catch someone's attention in the right context.
George and Steve. Oh.
Hello, this is Martha from 3M. You have many media efforts, so how can you measure which of all these amazing activities you're doing are bringing you more sales? Like how to invest more in one than another?
Yeah, it's a little difficult, especially for, I think, in the QSR industry. Attribution is still really difficult, so we try to do our best, but you know, our business is even predominantly cash, so there's another barrier there for us. For the brand over time aspect, I think you kind of have to give up on hoping to tell which one of those really drove and instead rely on, is the brand consideration moving over time? Is awareness moving? When you're actually looking at, from our media standpoint, I think that's where we rely on our agency and our partners from a data perspective to tell us which ones are driving. But the content marketing, that's not I don't think that's our goal and our focus to say that it ended in a sale as much as it kept it top of mind. The QSR industry is very much less loyalist and more just, who are you thinking of? Is it convenient? Is it there for you? And so our barrier is making sure that people know that this is a brand for them and that they'd be proud to associate themselves and they have some awareness of the products.
So George and Steve are going to be around the rest of the morning if you want to grab them for further questions. Guys, thanks very much. That was wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.